Now, it's no secret that I like game development a lot, but there's definitely one thing that stands out to me as my favorite part. That is, of course, game jams. Over the years, I've participated in Ludum Dare 5 times, and we've hosted several Brackeys game jams where I also joined in on the fun. In total, I've made over 10 game jam games, and each one has been a unique and fun experience. But in between all the fun, I've also made a lot of mistakes. So today I'll share a few tips on what to do before, during, and after a game jam so that you can hopefully avoid some of the pitfalls that I fell into. Now keep in mind that when it comes to game jams, there's no greater advice than to remember to just have fun. Game jams are all about having a good time and at the same time improving your skills. So if you just remember that, you'll probably be fine. Oh, and also make sure to playtest. That said, let's jump into it. But first, this video is sponsored by Core. Core is the new free game creation platform that lets you build, publish, and play games. Core makes prototyping and iteration fast, so it's a great platform for game jams, especially if you want to quickly set up a 3D multiplayer experience. You can get started making games right away using thousands of free, high-quality music, sound, and art assets with no coding required. Right now, Core is hosting the Kinda Funny Game Jam with Greg Miller, supporting the charity Extra Life. And starting June 1st, the International Game Developers Association will be hosting a Core-focused game jam. Be sure to check them out using the link in the description. On top of that, they recently launched Core Academy, which is a free online school for learning development skills that also gives you the opportunity to interact with industry pros for live mentorship. Everything is completely free, so I definitely encourage you to visit coregames.com or simply click the link in the description. So a game jam is coming up and you're just so excited to get started. If you could, you would start right now. And you can. Kind of. There are lots of stuff that you can do before a game jam. First of all, you have to decide if you're teaming up or going solo. And do yourself a favor and decide well in advance, since communication over forums and Discord channels can take some time. Now, teaming up can be really fun, and getting to work together with other people on something creative is an amazing experience. Most game jams offer a place that you can go in order to find people to team up with, or you can always join our Discord, which is filled with fellow game jammers. Personally, I usually go solo, but we always invite people over to jam along, which just makes the experience so much more fun. Plus, you always have someone nearby to playtest your game. Another thing that I usually do before a game jam starts is make a list of all the things and tools that I'm going to need during the jam. I mean, there's nothing more frustrating than having to wait for a download because you recently reinstalled your computer and forgot to download Unity. Not like that ever happened to me. Anyway, you guys probably want to remember to download and update everything you need. So here's a quick list of everything I use. For the game engine, I personally use Unity since it's the one that I'm most familiar with. But feel free to pick any of the other amazing engines out there. Also remember that you don't always have to create a video game. Board and card games are also viable options in many jams. Of course, other than the engine, you're probably also going to need some tools to create graphics and audio. I personally use Blender for modeling, Photoshop for 2D graphics, and Buskasoy and Audition for audio. Of course, some of these are paid, so here are some free alternatives to those of you interested. And if you're working as a team, make sure to set up file sharing and voice chat beforehand, especially if you're working online. Here are some of the tools that I personally use for that. And talking about tools, don't forget the good old pen and paper. This one doesn't need an update. It's always ready to go. So, finally the day has arrived and the jam has started. And the theme is amazing. But where do you start? Well, the first thing that I do is playtest. Alright, maybe not yet, but don't forget it. What I actually do is start brainstorming right away. This is all about getting as many ideas on the table as possible, even the most crazy out-of-scope ones. You can always tone those down later. But sometimes I get stuck on brainstorming for a long time, mostly because I start doubting if my ideas are good enough. However, over the years I've learned that your first idea is often the best one. So if you get stuck, maybe just roll with that. With that said, however, definitely spend some time in the brainstorming phase, since you can often pull some of your other ideas into your game later on. And don't worry too much about originality. You're not creating a commercial game, so who cares if it's a ripoff? Sometimes I find it's really fun to challenge myself with recreating some of my favorite games. And if you can put a twist on it, even better. Remember, game jams are all about learning, and one of the best ways to do that is by challenging yourself with creating a game, mechanic, or genre that you've never done before. Now, once the core idea is in place, I often take some time to plan out exactly what I want in the game. Here it's a good idea to keep in mind how much time you're actually going to have for the jam. Is this a 2-day jam or a 2-week jam? And no matter the time frame, make sure to limit your scope. After I think up some cool gameplay ideas with tons of systems and mechanics, I divide them by 2. Or maybe 20. I've ended up with overly ambitious ideas countless of times, and I found that it's way more satisfying to actually complete a simple game than barely making a playable demo of some advanced mechanic. So start small, you can always add stuff later on. I found that a good technique for making sure that I don't bite off more than I can chew is the Moscow method. With this, you can make a list of all the features you want in your game, mechanics, graphics, audio, and so on, and then divide them into 4 categories. Must have, the game needs this to function. Should have, this is big parts of the game but not the actual core. Could have, stuff to add if you have the time. And won't have, cool things but you probably won't have time to add them. That said, don't spend all day on planning. After all, this list will probably be updated along the way. If you're short on time, you can always move some of the things from could have to won't have. It's most important to just get started. And don't forget to playtest. And this is the point where I usually boot up Unity. And where everything kind of starts to become a messy blur of programming, bug fixing, and pretending to know what I'm doing making pixel art. I quickly lose sense of time while jamming, which means that I often forget about basic stuff like eating or drinking. So I started setting timers to make sure that I don't work too much and still function like a normal human being. Perhaps with a bit more energy drink. Also, when I seem to be facing a problem that just defies the laws of the universe, it's probably because I've been working too long and need to take a break. As soon as I take a walk or just do something else, a solution normally pops up. And even if it doesn't, you still return to the problem with renewed energy. Oh, and while taking a break, I of course make sure to have my friends playtest. Now, nearing the end of the jam, hours and maybe days have passed. You've struggled, and it's time to finish up the game. Everything probably isn't as you hoped it would be. But hey, you made something in very little time, and it's not meant to be perfect. Plus, there are often a bunch of things in the game that are really cool that you would have never planned to make. At this point, I used the last bit of time to do some important polishing and make sure not to neglect audio and UI. At least that's what I tell myself when I go to bed at night. And when you're finally done, make sure to leave an hour to get everything exported and submitted. And be happy, and remember, game jams aren't about the game itself. It's about the process and everything that you just learned in a few days. Plus, you might even have made some new friends along the way. Just think about it. You got to experience every part of the game development process in mini format. Everything from idea generation to polishing in the end. So congratulations, you're finally done. Now it's time to celebrate and rest. And maybe play some of the entries from your fellow community members. Remember, this is a guide and not the definitive best way to do a game jam. Everyone is different and have different workflows. With that said, I wish you the best of luck and lots of great inspiration for your next jam. And I of course hope to see you when we host our next game jam event. Also, don't forget to check out Core. It's completely free. Just visit coregames.com or click the link in the description. On that, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks to all the awesome Patreon supporters who donated in April, and a special thanks to Dash Black, Lost to Violence Love Forever, Face Amerify, John, Replica Studios, SRT Mike, Leo Lisette, Jason Yutescu, Nobby Ninja, Ville Vatanen, Daniel Desanik, Donachin Gascoigne, Dante Sam, Jacob Sanford, Naoki Wasaki, Marc-Antoine Girard, Gregory Pierce, Michael Korobov, The Mighty Zeus, Owen Cooper, Alison the Fierce, Erasmus, and Sirius. You guys rock!